Hello and welcome to Samsung's video content series where we talk to industry experts about construction. Today we are talking about cost and the ever-changing landscape and how developers need to operate within it. We are with Mario and Andrew. Mario is the CEO for London Land and is building apartments across the UK. Andrew is the chairman for Southern Grove and operates various businesses within construction from PBSA to PRS to co-living. Gentlemen, welcome. So many challenges in the market right now. It must be incredibly hard. What are some of the main challenges you face when it comes to, let's say, securing finances, given the very, very turbulent financial market that we're in?
The key changes that we have to deal with at the moment is much more financial aspect, the increasing tax to 25% this year. And of course, our funders are looking at their tax position and they're expecting their returns to be after tax. And the risk that they take into development process compared to investing into other assets which might have been already built, planning is secured, construction is done, and it's already revenue generating. It's all about making the risk and return profile work. And for us, it is always a very, very difficult play between the land value, the construction cost, the funding costs, and the exit that we can put together and find an optimum solution for our investors and our stakeholders. It is extremely challenging at the moment in the UK industry because the land owners' expectation versus the minimum profits that we need to return to our investors, particularly the affordable housing contribution, is always calculated based on the amount of affordable housing that the scheme can generate. And they allow us maximum 20% in the way that they calculate as a profit margin to us. So the market, most of the community, when they come back and make comments on our planning applications, they always comment on these topics, saying that we're there to make millions of profits and then walk away and leave them with a development. It has never been the case, and the local authority is there to police that. And in London, GLA is also quite strict on that. Their starting point from the affordable housing point of view is 50%. So we have to justify why we can't deliver 50% affordable housing. Yeah. Whereas trying to make, while we are trying to make our developments financially stack up, it's a very difficult process.
Absolutely. And Andrew, you've got a variety of investors behind you, sort of institutional as well as private equity, as well as sort of family offices. Yeah. Do you feel sort of similar in the kind of returns that you're looking for and how it used to be to what it is today?
Similar approach. I think that the profit margin is the key thing I pulled out from what he said. Profits become a bit of a dirty word in the UK now. Yeah. And ultimately, businesses need to make a profit. And if they're making a profit, then they can pay the taxes. And I think we need to work off higher profit margins, because what's actually happened in the last few years is we've been hit with a number of what I call force majeure items, items that are beyond your control. We broadly know where we are with bill costs, we broadly know what our exit values are, we broadly know what interest rates are, although obviously they're on the march. But the things that you can't legislate for is COVID.
Of course.
Okay. Or more recently, obviously, the war in Ukraine. So these are things that will have, material effect on energy prices, and that's something that we've had to consume in my student business, Future Generation. Rising energy charges are huge. Obviously, we've got Samsung products and air conditioning, and we use the building management system to assist with that. And we have, your air source heat pumps as well that mitigate that. But they still require an electrical load, and that electrical load comes at a cost, and you can't pass that on to
because it's all inclusive, isn't it?
It's all inclusive in my rates, and so to them to be competitive on the exit and to be competitive on a year-by-year rental basis, it just makes it more challenging. And so therefore you have to increase the profit margins, I think, on day one to take account of these force majeure items.
What is the expectation, I suppose, from developers like yourself? What kind of profit margin should you be working towards to keep it sustainable, I suppose, because there is a constant demand on you guys to develop. There's a constant demand in the market for your product. And at the same time, profits are being squeezed. So what sort of margins should we be working towards, do you think?
For me, I look at projects in different phases. We like to create a lot of value in the planning process. Yeah. That's quite unique to the UK, as we just discussed. And so we try to create, value on the structure of the deal and the planning, which effectively then goes into sweat equity to sit alongside our own cash to deliver it. So what does that really mean? By the time you're building on site, we'd like to be a minimum of 30%, if not more. But then, as you say on the GLA toolkit, they want you can only have a 20%. Well, I don't know any investors that I know that would invest in me if I was only making a 20% return. The reality is, it's like a merry-go-round, and you're spinning plates and juggling balls, to coin a phrase, to make the whole thing stack up. But I won't go into a deal now unless it's going to make a significant profit, because when things change, those margins go down and you don't get the money back.
It is a constant balancing act, isn't it? Because the projects, the real estate development process takes between 3 to 7 years to underwrite and deal with. And anything can change in that time frame. So what we're trying to do is we are trying to come up with unique ideas, partner with organizations like Samsung, trying to find efficiencies in what we do, create opportunities for our partnerships, try to cut the middleman, so that we can return that margin. And we are coming up with the ideas every day. But it is extremely tough, extremely difficult to retain that margin throughout the life cycle of a project. And external forces have never helped in the UK. Whether financial global crisis that we are experiencing in our careers, now potentially twice, and Brexit and COVID, they are all things that we didn't expect at the time. And it's very difficult to deal with these things.
It's constantly evolving, and it's a changing goalpost for developers like yourselves, whereby you have to keep meeting market demand, and it's a very difficult process to follow, because you still need to deliver that value to the investors.
Trying to secure debt at the moment is very difficult. It's like it's like a unicorn. Unless you've got existing debt relationships, a standing start, I think, would be very, very challenging in the current climate. Mary, I don't know about you.
Of course, they will, price the risk. It depends who you are and what.
And you have to have the track record.
Track record you have, absolutely.
And it's a crowded market as well, isn't it, for lenders and developers, I suppose?
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of people who get money out the door, and the UK market is generally seen as one of the most stable in the world.
It's a stable place to spend your money,
I mean, I think in my student business, in the PBSA sector, there's something like $8 billion invested from US funds last year.
Absolutely, and that's a good point, because PBSA, very strong in the UK, of course, our greatest export being sort of education and what have you, as well as now we are looking at PRS, built to rent, very closely. It's a new concept in the UK. It's getting harder and harder. I think the average property price in the UK, correct me if I'm wrong, is about close to £300,000. A lot of money for a young individual to get on the ladder. So built to rent is filling that gap within the market. So it's an interesting time to be a property developer, of course. There's lots of opportunity out there to create a product, to change classification of product if needed, change licensing of product. But of course, at the end of the day, they are requirements placed upon you to give that return to the investors. And no matter what skin you wear on the day, be it PBSA, be it PRS, be it a general developer, it's a tricky market to work in, I think.
For sure.
It is, for sure.
Yeah. So on top of all, of course, the demands from the investors and demands from general market and government, etc., there are also great demands placed now upon you guys, an extra layer placed upon you by the consumers, the actual people who are staying, the end users. How is that sort of impacting you guys when it comes to development?
The consumer market has been changing, especially the last 2 to 3 years, dramatically.
Yeah.
The subset consumer market is much more diverse. The consumers are less loyal. They want as they wish. Their demands and needs are extremely diverse. And you have to offer them a product, and more they are looking for relevant, flexible, convenient homes and offering from us developers full of lifestyle experiences. So we're trying to marry our product with the right market. And their expectations vary from project to project, location to location, and we're trying to understand that and offer the right product for the right market. And of course, age group impacts on that. Whether it's a rental product or a sale product impacts on their expectations very much so.
Right.
But the changes can also be advantageous. You mentioned a PRS sector. It's an interesting one because I was involved. I was one of the senior leadership team members of the Athletes Village, East Village. Yes. It was developed now just over 10 years ago, and now being operated as Get Living London brand. And that was one of the, and if not the biggest, PRS developments in the UK and also the Europe at the time. Because it was developed from the outset, we were trying to future-proof that product. Of course, we learned a lot from that process, and the PRS sector increased the quality, in my view, of the offering quite significantly compared to the previous development products, especially built-to-sell products, because developing to keep is very different to developing to sell, of course. Yeah. But most of the investor base that we work with, their investment cycle is 5 to 7 years, because typically that's the fund's life. They want an exit, right? Absolutely. And you have to think about it. Every time you exit from these projects, how can you make it appealing? And where the market might be at that point as well, whether would we be still relevant for the product to sell. So we constantly go through this exercise and try to change the way that we do our business at London Land Group, for example. We are trying to learn lessons from other industries, like automation industry, for example. Yes. They are systematic. Their processes based on knowledge, and we're trying to convert our processes similar to that and partner up with companies like Samsung who can help us achieve our objectives and make a difference.
Of course. And Andrew, sort of similar to you guys, whereby you've got various products from built to rent to built to sell to PBSA. What are your learnings on similar lines to what Mario is saying?
Again, it's similar to Mario. I mean, I think the lifestyle piece is so important. I mean, pick up on our student stuff. I mean, Guildford, our sort of jewel in the crown. I mean, we've got crazy golf on a rooftop, and rooftop environment that I picked up from my travellings to New York. Combined with private dining, all done with Samsung, to award-winning gyms with a social media gym influencer, and that's expected now. And therefore you're looking for product differentiation. We have YouTube areas where people can do social media promotion, and of course on Guildford now we've got we're not just pulling the University of Surrey, we've got all the dance schools and all the performing arts schools, so we've actually got a full-on dance studio. So that's expected, as well as the quality product, as well as the Samsung kit and the air conditioning and the pod bathrooms and all the other stuff.
And you've got to be more, because that's what people are expecting, all the bells and whistles on top, and as you say, at an acceptable price as well.
I mean, the other thing for me is, I'm a home owner, but the reality is you don't really own your own. The bank own your home. And a lot of people don't. It's a perception point. We get paid in gross salary, and the reality is we live off our net salary. And it's just how we were brought up. But the reality is you have more rights under your lease than you do under your mortgage. Pretty controversial, but it's true. So actually, you've got equity in the property, and of course you're looking for the growth. Those days of growth, in my opinion, are it's levelled out for sure. And if you bought a property and you got that growth, and then you traded it, and then moved on to another property, and so those days are gone. I mean, we're probably break even at the moment, if not slightly falling, depending on where your locale is. I'm a much bigger believer in the sort of environments that Mario's creating, and I'm hoping to, in co-living and BTR. Because I think that young people particularly are more transient, they want more out of life, they're willing to travel, and they'll have more income if it's not tied up in stamp duty. And I think there needs to be complete changes in how that's perceived in real estate across the board.
When it comes to rental place, you expect to be perfect. You expect to meet all your expectations. And now it's a very, very competitive environment. And but that makes it even more relevant for us to be on the edge of the technology, make it connected, make it flexible, make it relevant. And that goes from physical asset to services to go with it. And the technology that we have now available to us helps enormously, but technology never stands still. And imagine that we plan for these for many, many years before we build it, and we expect that to last 60, 70 years.
Yes.
You have to make sure that during that life cycle it can be adapted, it can be flexible, and respond to changing needs. It's very, very difficult, but I think partly because of the regulatory requirements, which is catching up, partly because it's a very competitive environment, we are getting better at it.
I agree.
What are your views on the government agenda? We understand that it's constantly in flux. How do you keep up as developers? Because the demands are constant on you guys.
I mean, the first thing I would say, the overarching, is someone from the private sector needs to be involved with government agenda. Yeah. The problem you've got is you've got a lot of theorists who have not actually built anything or done anything. And I'm not being facetious there, but real estate is a major, major part of the UK.
Yes.
And house building is a major industry in terms of how well the UK is doing. And I really think someone like Mario actually would be good to influence, government agenda, because at the moment it's all too theoretical. And what's happened recently, from a house building point of view, is they've got away with the targets. And so, in schools you've got targets and KPIs for teachers, and yet from a government point of view you don't have to deliver housing targets. That makes no sense. So, I've been quoting the press about that. To scrap targets is the wrong thing to do, because different areas have different targets and different opportunities. Mary just said before we came in, you're doing this fantastic site down in Poole, which looks beautiful, which is a key strategic site for the area, and the mayor's turning up. Well, that's great, yes. And that's how it should be. But what site shouldn't be used as a political hot potato, because the reality is everybody needs a home and everyone deserves a home.
Of course, and we've got to make it easier for people to get a home.
That's why I think we'll end up being generation rent with a view to purchasing the future, personally. Yeah. And I think that is quite an easy sell to use government backing to do that, where you pay part rent, you pay part down, it goes towards a deposit, and ultimately end up with a home. That is the future. All these days of mum and dads, shelling out tens of thousands of pounds and losing money on stamp duty, I don't believe that's sustainable. I don't think it's particularly good or healthy.
So what, in your opinion, does that partial rent, partial payment? So could you walk us through what your idea would be?
Yeah, there's a number of products out there, and there's a number of people who are doing it, and I'm chatting to some very serious people about it. So it'd be sort of part institutional money, part public sector money.
Yes.
And effectively, almost be capped rents with a view to that making a contribution towards the property in the longer term. So you can potentially hand it on for generations. But there's loads of different products that can evolve from that.
Yes.
There's so many things that could be done just to ease the pain and make it easier and more, easier and transparent for young people to get on the ladder.
Absolutely.
I mean, some of these help to buy schemes were available, and it ended a few months back. That was a fantastic help from the government, which helped the industry enormously, especially during the pandemic period. And we continued building and selling. That was very advantageous. We have to have support from the government. We welcome regulatory requirements, and because that needs to sustain the quality of what we are doing. Unfortunately, historically, meeting the minimum requirements was okay, but now it's not, and you have to offer more and more to be competitive, especially in the build-to-rent market.
So how does that affect cost and margins and profits? As you say, you need to go above and beyond the regulations, and that's for, I presume, sustainability, right?
Sustainability, but we also offer well above that the minimum requirements, and it goes to technology, build quality, and so on. Enormously, the answer is it's a significant cost to do something different and above the expectation. But we are trying to come up with new ways of dealing with that. And as I mentioned before, partnering up with our suppliers like Samsung helps us cut our middleman so that we have a philosophy as London Land that we always buy our components from the source.
Yes.
And that helps us cut the cost to absolute minimum and deal with the inflationary pressures on our projects, but also control the quality directly. But of course, that comes with added risk and responsibilities. We have to increase the number of our staff to deal with these issues. That's a cost, but it is rewarding because our product is really good. It is different. It's relevant, and the quality is much higher. And we're proud to be one of those companies or have sustainability in our core values. So we do these things above and beyond the requirements. It comes at a cost, but we are working with the industry to mitigate that as much as we can. And our partners like yourself helps us a lot to mitigate it.
And Andrew, you've got 5 completed buildings. You're now working on a new project for built to rent. What are your learnings from PBSA, and do you think they translate into the 2 new sectors that you're going into?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, our PBSA is, we've got 2,049 student beds. Yeah. 21 million gross rent roll a year now, which is fantastic.
Wow.
Powered by Samsung, which is fantastic.
Thank you.
But no, we've got the next brand is the co-living brand, which is called Evolution, and it's just a play on words, really. It's Evolution by Southern Grove, like Future Generation on Southern Grove, and it's an evolution. So you finish your degree, you can do a postgrad, and you go into a studio, a co-living studio.
So I presume senior living will be next on the
Senior
agenda?
living will be next, yeah. So you'll see.
Because I hear that's a growing industry, I believe.
It's massive.
I believe
industry.
We call it silver living now.
We call it later living, but
later
compared to, for example, other markets, Europe, Australia, and US, I think the senior living, later living, purpose-built later living product is about 15% of the market. So there's significant growth opportunity, and there are specialist companies here. As London Living, we are doing core living, multifamily living, and later living.
So out of those 4 products, which one would you say is the most profitable?
I think it's a very, very difficult question to answer.
Yeah.
In all of them, we are bound with the returns our investment partners expect.
Yes.
And what the local authority and planning authority would allow us to do.
Yes.
I think across all those use classes, we are pretty much targeting the same returns.
Same returns.
But the product is different. That's why we differentiate them. So because the offering needs to be relevant to the consumer market. For example, if you look at later living, but there with significant similarities as well.
Exactly.
You know, what drives later living? You know, living with like-minded group of people or similar age. And sense of belonging, sense of well-being plays a big part, associated with services and physical spaces that we offer to them and which they can use. That's a significant process, acceptance for them, and they are looking for it.
So a sense of community, really.
Oh, very much so.
What you guys are looking at, a sense of community.
Well, that's what the consumer's looking at as well, and that's what the planners are looking at.
Correct.
But going back to your question from my perspective, and I would say this, PBSA, pound for pound, is the best because you get more bang for your buck. On a site, you get more units and more income per square foot than anything else. And it's so tried and tested now.
Yes.
The yields, the institutions understand it, so the exit's guaranteed. And as I say, it's one of our best exports. I mean, I'm 65% let for next year, 2023 and 24 already.
Congratulations.
I mean, the other one is international students, particularly with our Samsung products. And what I'm learning from your previous question is that our international guests, clients, consumers, they love the Samsung products. They love air conditioning. You know, I'm the only PBSA provider in the UK that does air conditioning. I mean, I put sprinkler systems in my buildings 6 years ago when I first started on the back of Grenfell, you know, and
yes.
So that goes back to your point about future-proofing, but you got to build it into your business plan on day one. But, you know, cooling loads are on the increase. We've all had hot summers recently. Yeah. It's the brand proposition, the lifestyle piece, and overall the arching brand that people want to buy into and hopefully get a premium for that. Otherwise, you're not making a profit at all.
Of course, as developers, you have to account for unforeseen circumstances. And that's a really tricky one to have at the back of your mind. How do you combat that when it comes to cost and all the rest of it?
I think what the last 4 to 5 years, Taz, has taught us is that you know, as developers, we need to adapt, and we need to put line items in for unforeseeable events. And we've had a chain of events, starting with the Brexit vote. Then we had COVID, which was obviously a worldwide epidemic. And then unfortunately we've had the war in Ukraine.
Yes.
And they have all had material impacts on the real estate and construction sector. The first one, we lost skills. The second one, we had downtime. And the third one, we've got rising inflation, energy costs. You add all that together, you need to adapt to it. And that's why I said, I think a clever or a seasoned developer now with his investor base will build in additional profit margins to take account of these bumps in the road.
Absolutely. We have risk and opportunity register, and we put that together before underwriting every project. And on a monthly basis, we review it. But some of these events that we experienced in the last 5 years, you cannot price them, what the impact is.
Yeah.
And most of them you can't foresee. And as Andrew said, you have to adapt and deal with it as it comes. How we responded to, for example, the latest inflationary environment is we incorporate our own construction companies, so that we are in control of our own money, make sure that our subcontractors are paid so they continue building for us, and cut the middleman so that we mitigate some of that extra cost. But we have to keep doing that. It doesn't come for free. It brings more risks, but replacing one risk with another risk, at least one of them is in our control, and we try to mitigate it in that way.
Absolutely.
Well, that's the same for us, actually. Funnily enough, we, in a different way, we took over the operation of our buildings.
Yes.
So we had we were white labelling with another operator. I've actually taken over the buildings. I've 2P'd all the staff over to my business, and they're all branded up as Future Generation. So I took on 60 staff, and that saves me about 1.2 million a year in operational costs. But what it does mean in the short term is I don't have to increase the prices as much as my competitors do to the students. So therefore, I've got a better offering at a lower and more reasonable price, and that's what goes back to you have to adapt as a developer. It means more risk for me, more responsibility.
Yeah.
But that's what you do. You got to rise to the challenge.
It's a tricky one to balance, and clearly you guys are doing a great job in a very turbulent market. So thank you for that. When we talk about profitability and the return that needs to be given to the investors, and this fine balancing act as developers that you're doing, do you find that new technology helps you in that journey? For example, let's say connected living or connected appliances, connected product. Does that play a part in creating a better environment for your tenants or commanding a higher price for your property? Is that something you guys look at?
We do, and we look at it from two perspectives. One, to cut cost, and two, to add more value and make our product more attractive.
Sure.
And it depends on the market that we're focusing on. If we're talking about younger generation, perhaps BBSA, perhaps co-living, and you tailor your offering. They are looking for a gigabyte fiber optic cabling. 100 megabyte is not enough anymore. And we are now looking to partner with companies who can offer upload and download speeds as such. For digital nomads. Whereas for later living, perhaps you're looking for machine learning and artificial intelligence-driven Samsung products, for example, that we're looking at, which can make later living senior residents to be more independent, more safe and secure, and have a better experience with where they live. And these products make it much more relevant for them. Make it much more convenient, flexible, and offer lifestyle experiences where, especially as a tenant, renting tenant, makes it much more appealing for them compared to other developments. And that's very, very important for us. And also, it's not about charging high rents, but also it's retaining the tenants makes a big difference.
Yes.
And we use the technology again to be very personal with them, help them personalize it, but also foster relationships between the tenants. And that's a big thing for us. I've never seen a tenant leave our developments because we are 3%, 5% higher in rent and go to somewhere else.
Mario's spot on. I mean, the biggest single issue with mainly BTR coming into the market on the back of, everyone used to love offices, and offices are still desirable, but they're not as attractive as an investment proposal as say BTR is now. And then obviously a tenant leaves, you've got that swing space for a couple of months where you have to decorate, tidy it up, and that's where purpose-built BTR, build to rent type schemes are really good now, filling a space and a demand. And if you can keep those tenants there, it keeps your costs down of having to get an agent to bring people in, incentives, cashbacks, all those things that you're familiar on the sales and marketing process. If you get the consistency of tenant, it makes such a difference. I mean, my Steel City development in Sheffield has been going sort of 4 or 5 years now, and I've had people there the whole time. I've had Chinese students that have literally lived there for 4 years. They've got all their friends there. They call it home, and that is utopia as a landlord, really. And to keep that consistency of revenue, and as you say, a couple of percent here and there, they don't mind, because if they're enjoying the experience, then that's great.
So the way we see it, of course, technology binds communities together. And I think that's quite important when it comes to choosing the kind of technology. And what we have been trying to work on quite efficiently and effectively is bringing product out for developers which adds value. And AI, as you mentioned, Mario, is at the heart of it. And of course, as you both say, create that differentiator for long-term partnerships between your tenants and the developers, because yes, there is a lot of choice out there.
Yeah, and your heating and cooling systems, which you can control remotely.
But if you can have your buildings that are clever and technology friendly, which obviously Samsung does, you can then log in from anywhere in the world and turn your lights off, check your cameras, make sure the washing machine's on at the right, the right time, all this sort of stuff. So
absolutely,
everyone, I think everyone expects that, particularly consumers.
Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was great talking to you guys. Please visit Samsung.com to view our other episodes in this collaboration series.